Welcome to another episode of the Love Procurement podcast. My name is Vishal Patel. I'll be the host for this conversation and really excited to welcome Ben Farrell. Ben is the Global CEO of CIPS, and CIPS is the Chartered Institute of Procurement and Supply Chain, which to our audience and anyone in procurement should be extremely well known. But very excited for this conversation. We're going to kind of try to cover a lot of ground, but when we chatted briefly before, the theme of voice, the voice of global procurement sort of came up, which I think is very appropriate and relevant to an organization like CIPS. But Ben, if you will, maybe just a quick intro from yourself.
Hi, Vishal. Hi, everybody. Nice to be here. I love the name of the podcast, by the way. We can come back to that, but do you know what? I've had the opportunity to travel so much this year. And if there's one thing, it's always at the top of my list when people say, what do you learn? And I have learned people love procurement. This passion for the profession is so strong. If you could bottle it up and compare it with other professions, honestly, I think it's world beating. So fantastic. But by way of an introduction, I've been the CEO of CIPS for the past year or so. Before that, I worked in UK retail, an organisation called John Lewis Partnership, has supermarkets, 340, and department stores and an online presence, about £13 billion worth of sales a year, about $20 billion. Decent sized organisation, 80,000 employees, which is interesting, good work. And I got to join at the time when the world was changing from a sort of bricks and clicks retail into online and the digital space. So it's very much part of the digital transformation of that organisation, which is still really sorted out finally. Prior to that, I was in the army. I was in the British Army for 20 plus years. Went to the Royal Military Academy after I'd been to university at Sandhurst. And then really enjoyed my career, which started in Berlin, actually at the end of the Cold War in 1990, when the wall came down and the great thaw between the East and the West, and then was very involved in conflicts in the Balkans and Iraq and Afghanistan. Oh. And eventually my wife said, it's time to do something sensible. You need to leave the army and get a proper job. So I left in 2011, and I'm very happy to have arrived at CIPS last year, where it's been a most fantastic 12 months. I'm really energized by all that's going on in the profession around the world and the relevance of the profession for the future. Because I swear, I'm more convinced than I was when I had the opportunity to take the job about the contribution the profession can and will make in the future. So I'm massively stimulated about making sure we deal with that properly. And that's a bit about the voice of the profession. You were talking about that.
Yeah.
Being the real champions. As the professional body, we've got no axe to grind. We're not selling anything, a product or anything like that. We're selling the notion of the relevance of the profession to the wider professional career environment. And that's our job. And then acting on behalf of the profession when there's necessity to be in the media, talk about the profession's role in the future. So being the voice of the profession needs to champion it and advocate on behalf of it and explain to people what it does, why it's important, why it will be even more relevant in the future.
Wonderful.
Sorry, Michelle, slightly a longer answer than you were expecting, maybe.
No. This was perfect, actually, and a really good segue. We have a couple of initial topics we'll cover. One of which is a little bit of the past and the history of CIPS, which I think it would be interesting for the audience to hear. But since you just came off the world tour, and I expect meeting procurement groups around the world in different countries, what was sort of the general feeling you got of meeting procurement in different world countries? Is there any moments that kind of stuck out to you? I'm just curious about this sort of, it's rare to have this global view of procurement.
It is. It's been amazing. Do you know what? I have traveled across, I think, pretty much all the continents. On the top of my list for next year is the USA, actually, because I haven't had the chance to visit and see what's going on. And we've just opened an office in New York, and we're keen to show up more as the voice of the profession, as a professional body for procurement supply in the United States. We've got a great partnership going with the NISCL in Canada, and we want to be more present in the United States. But back to your question. What have I learned? Starting with, I've learned, people say to me, I love procurement, I love my profession. Quite often they say, I fell into procurement, but I love it, and I wish I could share that love more proactively with other people. So I think one of the things about being the voice of the profession is to be able to articulate it well enough for people to feel it's an active choice when they choose to be an accountant, a lawyer, a doctor, or whatever as a procurement professional. So we need to try harder to open it up and make it more accessible in the language we use for younger people to understand what it is and how it works. So I think that's one of the things I've taken away. I've taken away that the relevance of the changing nature of the world means, and trade and technology, all sorts of aspects mean that the profession of procurement and supply is ever more relevant in businesses. And then I've done some work with various procurement futurists, thinking about the world we're going to live in, like 2050. There are 9.7 billion people on the planet, up from 8 billion now, 65% of them in urban environments against 49% today. So we've got a changing world that's going to have all sorts of implications around energy, food supply, water supply, medical care, all sorts of stuff. And when you think about the nature of, we can call it the global supply chain, but I like to call it global supply web. When you think about it, bringing that all together, orchestrating that to be delivered effectively in the right place at the right time with the right product is going to be so relevant in the future that I'm saying to everybody, this is a moment in time. So CIPS history started in 1932 on the back of the Smoot-Hawley Act introducing tariffs into the US on steel. British businessmen got together and said we need to protect the interests of the profession, develop competence and standards and those sorts of things. And it's changed and morphed through time into different things and different approaches. But I think this is now one of those moments in time. For all the reasons I described, that the profession to really move on, to thrive in the future. I've recently done some stuff on LinkedIn. It was really interesting yesterday, saying, what do people think will be in the job description for procurement professionals in the future? So much brilliant stuff is coming out, ranging, from all sorts of competences, soft skills, data engineering, obviously masters of artificial intelligence, sustainability. There are so many future dimensions on the job that I think, my focus for next year is going to be opening what I'm calling the great conversation, involving all the procurement professionals who want to contribute to craft the profession of the future, make that super relevant to the future. I should say that we have 97 branches around the world. We've got members in 180 countries.
Yeah.
I try and communicate with everybody to get everybody's input into this, and get busy talking to everybody in this great conversation around the world.
What a great start to your new role at CIPS, to kind of get a lay of the land, right, with the different regions of CIPS around the world.
But so if you just let me, sorry, I should have said one other thing. One other striking thing is, and I think it's both something to be excited about and also a warning. When I visited on the UN's list of developing nations, there are extraordinary things going on in developing nations. In Saudi Arabia, for example, a developing nation, the procurement professionals there are literally engineering the future of a nation. They're building cities, Neom and Qadir, and all those extraordinary giga projects. They are leading that. They are driving that. I was talking to the Minister for Housing in Riyadh the other day. He's got to build 80,000 homes in Riyadh every year, and he's a procurement supply chain guy. So it was really interesting. These guys are leading the development of that nation. We're writing a national procurement strategy in Nigeria. They said to me that we want to create the Dubai of Africa here. Help us do this. So we're busy doing that. I've been in East Africa. These developing nations are hard at it, developing, and are really ambitious. The individuals in these nations are very committed to development, personal development, qualification, upskilling themselves constantly. I get a slightly different view in developed nations. And I think I'm going to overstate it for clarity's sake, really. Maybe some degree of complacency. And I think that you don't get that everywhere. It'd be totally unfair to say that, but I do think you get a different sense of the energy being put into developing nations versus developed nations. And I just think it could be a warning for developed nations to say, sooner or later, the developing nations are going to shoot past you in all that they're doing, their GDP and their quality of life and all those sorts of things. So I think there's a case for developed nations to really be a bit more introspective about where they are and get busy committing to the future. And you can see it in national strategies and how they are articulated. So there's some big issues there dealt with.
No, I mean that's really great insight, and it's a great point about like how procurement is involved in deeper almost nation building activities in certain parts of the world, and in others it's still sort of climbing the ladder situation and trying to prove the value of the function in many cases. But so, just maybe moving on to a little bit about CIPS. So you mentioned a bit of the history of CIPS. You mentioned a little bit of like how you see procurement's role evolving, and the different directions it can go, right? And I think I totally agree with you, and that's actually why we came up with this whole love procurement concept, was because it was pretty apparent that people who do procurement actually love what they do, and in most cases they're falling into it, they're not choosing it, and that also still says something about what procurement is about. So I think that's a very relevant point. But maybe in your first, maybe good to hear from us for the audience. Like, so in your next couple of years, what are some of the big sort of milestones or objectives you would have as CEO of CIPS?
Yes, so thank you. Just to place CIPS in context, as I mentioned earlier, we existed since 1932. It's born in the United Kingdom, but it's a global organization in every aspect, and I want to be clear on that. We set the global standards. We have a chartered remit to do that, and so we're the custodian of the standards, and we have a framework for people to meet. These are the global standards of procurement at different levels, and from that we provide development, education, training for individuals and qualifications, and so you can then achieve your MCIPS and your chartered status and your fellowship. And that's been growing since 1932. And as I said, we have members in 180 countries and 97 branches around the world. I'm so proud. Recently, these are volunteer branches from procurement professionals who are members of CIPS. And the last one opened last month in Iraq, starting in Basra, and then probably developing in Baghdad as well, to reflect what's going on over there in terms of the redevelopment of that nation. Prior to that was Azerbaijan and Kazakhstan. But when I put the network over the globe, we're pretty much covering all the nations and connecting people. I was in Warsaw in Poland recently, had a brilliant meeting there, and there was another one in Port Harcourt in Nigeria this week. These branches, they're all meeting and discussing the pressing issues of procurement, what's happening, thinking about the future, and just sharing knowledge, best practice, networking, securing jobs. So, my encouragement, anybody who's a member, when they go overseas, because clearly it's a global qualification, your branch is always there as a network, professional network, and like-minded people enjoying their work. So we've got the vast branches, and we've now got 11 offices around the world. So this year we've opened an office, as I mentioned, New York, in Tobago, in Trinidad and Tobago in the Caribbean. I'm going very excitedly this Sunday. I'm flying to Trinidad for a week where we've got the CIPS Caribbean Conference.
All right.
Yeah, brilliant. There, and we've opened offices in East and West Africa. We've opened in Abuja, Nigeria, Accra in Ghana, in Nairobi, where we'll be serving Ethiopia, and Uganda, Tanzania in Ethiopia. We've got an office in Southern Africa. We've opened in Singapore, going to open in Delhi on the 1st of January. We've got Australia and New Zealand as well. So one way and another, we're getting busy showing up to be more relevant locally for people to engage with us. Because as the profession becomes more relevant for the future, I think we need to be a more constant presence and be there in those nations to help develop both public sector and private sector procurement, and share best practice from all those branches, synthesize this all, be able to develop, share that with organizations and individuals so they get better and better at it. And that's what we're up to. And our mission literally is to not make money. We have to make enough to keep going, but our mission is literally to professionalize procurement supply around the world. And in the charter, the Royal Charter that was signed when CIPS got its sort of charter status, it's to develop the art and science of procurement and supply. That's our job. So we're busy developing that around the world. And when I go to Africa, and the stats say 1 in 4 people on the planet will be African by 2050, we need to make sure the competencies are in place to help Africa as a continent thrive in 2050. So that's what we're about. That's what we're up to. Excellent.
I like to hear the Nairobi office, having been born in Nairobi and visiting there quite often myself. It's one that maybe I'll have to visit at some point.
Please do. Yeah, there's some great people there. There's a most fantastic CIPS branch based in Nairobi. They're super active. I went there recently, and they had a big branch event in Nairobi. 250 people who turned up. Some had travelled quite a long way, and we discussed all the matters impacting Kenya and what was going on. And we're working on an MOU with KISM, the Kenyan Institute of Supplies Management, so that essentially we can share global knowledge locally.
Wonderful. Really great to hear. Maybe you've mentioned this a couple of times, even in your own career path, right? Of digital disruption or digital transformation. It's going to be. It has been a recurring theme, right, for the last 2 decades in most functions, including procurement, and of course with AI, it's going to continue to happen. I expect there was a lot of discussion in your travels and within CIPS around AI and how it's transforming procurement. What do you think procurement professionals are most concerned about, or most excited about when it comes to AI?
I suppose it's easy to go to the most concerned about, was it, will AI take my job?
Right.
Which comes up quite a lot, less so at the moment. I say that because I think the debate's moved on. The conversation, as people get a better understanding of it, is getting more sophisticated to the excitement about the possibilities of what's there. And I've seen it employed in all sorts of places. Like Port of Singapore, they're doing amazing things there. In Australia, medical care. In UK defence, lots of places where AI is really adding value, but not to jeopardize people's jobs. The nature of the job might change, and we talked about data engineering as a skill and those sorts of things, because you need really competent people and good data around it. So the upskilling to be relevant for the future is part of the conversation. I have moved a long way from AI is going to take my job type conversations, because at the end of the day, it is literally a tool to allow you to do your job as effectively as possible. It will still require people to drive it and use good judgment, and use all their wisdom and experience and understanding to get the right outcomes. You have to understand procurement to utilize AI. It's not going to be something you can suddenly say, I know nothing about the subject, I'll turn to AI, and you don't even know whether your answer is good, bad, or indifferent. So I'm excited about, and many people have seen it, of the application of it in a value-adding sense. I think there are no other functions where the application of AI with good data can drive value and also good mitigation of risks, improve resilience than the opportunity to present it. It really does open up some strong possibilities for being a profession. That's why I keep saying the relevance of it. It's sort of enabled by AI to a large extent. So I think it's for us to be excited. I'm also encouraging, I must have met 400 or 500 CPOs this year in different organizations, encourage them to be alongside the CEO saying, this is what we could be doing with AI to deliver the value in the organization. So far from fearing it, I'm saying lean into it. Don't make it a passive activity, make it an active activity that you're engaged in and pushing the boundaries of what's possible. And there's real value to be had there. So I think it's the reality. It's not going away. It's a tool to do your job. And we've had lots of tools introduced over the years in different ways. And in the normal scheme of events, people are worried about the impact of it. It turns out to be a tool for the trade. Your skills are super relevant. Human beings will be at the heart of all organizations because ultimately it's about how you feel as part of an organization, and all the human value is going to stay there. But it does present the procurement supply profession, I think, with a massive opportunity to really own it and add value as a result.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. Of course, being on the technology side of procurement, and actually, our view is we've had a few discussions on this internally, and tried to boil it down. Like, what is procurement about? At the end of the day, yes, you could say it's about savings and all that. That's one of the results of procurement, but I think procurement is very much about relationships with your internal stakeholders, your suppliers, and with people, right? Like you're building relationships. And actually, part of one of these, as we were doing this love procurement sort of thing, we captured some quotes from people on why do you love procurement? And one that sticks out to me is someone who said, I don't source suppliers, I source relationships, which I thought was a really good way of putting it, right? Because it's almost never like a one-time sort of supplier that you want to bring into the business. You want to bring in a good partner. And I think it is all about relationships. And the thing that AI can do is, I feel that a lot of the last couple of decades that procurement has kind of been bogged down by all this digital work. I need to chase an approval. I need to create a report. I need to, do something on the software that I now have. And it's taken away from the people part of the job. And I think that AI is going to be the thing that brings that back and allows procurement to, focus more on the people part, which only people can do.
So when we're thinking about the skills for the future, some of the development of the people skills, the softer skills, are really at the heart of what we're talking about, whether it's SRM. Also, we're doing things like, the CPO to CEO course, which is a sort of leadership development program for 6 months to allow people to fulfill the potential of all those people. We pointed Tim Cook and Mary Barron, procurement supply people leading big organizations, and think about the relevance of all the skills that they've developed over the years, leading those amazing global organizations together. And when I was actually driving here today, I was listening to a book about it was actually talking about the iPhone, the components of the iPhone, and people say designed in California, made in China. But when you actually take it apart, it is literally the best example, or one of the great examples, of a global supply web. With glass from Germany, bits and silica actually in origins in Spain, further developed in Belgium, shipped to the US, eventually in Taiwan, made in China. Do you know what? It's extraordinary. But the point you're making about managing the relationships with all those different people to bring them together to create something and deliver an outcome to everybody's satisfaction. Do you know what? That is a massive skill that we're seeing more has even greater relevance than ever before because of the nature of material, product, and the world we live in. So these are super important skills, and that's why I'm totally convinced by what we're doing here in procurement is literally, and we're going to define a job description, start allowing people easy access to the skills that are part of that, and developing those skills for the future. And I think that's the job for 26 for CIPS.
Yeah, no, that's that's fantastic. Maybe in closing, we kind of ask everybody this question, and you may have already sort of answered it in a way, but why do you love procurement?
The people I have met, I was involved in procurement. When I was in the army, I first learned about defence procurement, and then I was in my old job in John Lewis and John Lewis Partnership. I had procurement under me latterly, and bits of the supply chain as well. And then in the last year, you know what? It was you start a job and you're never quite sure what to fully expect. I have found the most fantastic community of people out there, loving their work, proud of what they do, is stimulated and excited about how much value they're adding to organisations. We had the CIPS Volunteer Conference and Awards. These are people who are so committed to their work. It's inspiring. I love it. Honestly, I've met the most amazing people this year who are part of our CIPS community, who are doing things above and beyond in this profession. So fantastic. I'm completely convinced that we have the most motivated, certainly the volunteers, community of people. You know, when I arrived in Nigeria, the volunteers were something at the airport at 4 a.m. to meet me, to make sure that my visit was a success. They'd laid on this extraordinary week of visiting important organizations and meeting influential people in Nigeria. But that has been so typical of the people who I've met this year in procurement and the CIPS community. Utterly amazing. So I've loved that. I literally couldn't have asked for a better time. And I'm so fired up to see what's possible through the coming years. And so I'm pretty relentless in my determination to elevate the profession to fulfilling the remit that it can definitely fulfill. So we're really on a mission to do that.
Excellent. Yeah, it's very exciting. I mean, I've known of CIPS for my career in procurement, which is going on 15-20 years now, and it's exciting to see almost a resurgence of CIPS, refreshed all over the world, but at its core, really serving as the local community for procurement, which I think is super important. Very excited for you guys to kind of increase the presence in the US. I think that's going to be really good. And of course, thank you for joining us on the Love Procurement podcast, and hopefully we can have you on again, and kind of do another an annual podcast with you, and kind of hear about CIPS and all of the good work you're doing.
That's really kind. Thanks for having me. Love to come back and share more of what we're doing. Maybe sometime when I'm in the United States. Meet up. But it's great. It's great to be able to share what we're doing. I'd love to hear from people who are either members, non-members, what more we could be doing to help. Really all ears. We want to hear from the community as a whole, to be able to be that voice, so it's really good for people. And I'm on LinkedIn, and every day I'm getting engaged by people talking about what we're doing. So anyone who's listening to do so, has a view on stuff, really welcome.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Ben, and we'll chat soon.
Hope so. Take care. Good to see you.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.